Before moving to live in the Philippines with my wife Chris to establish our new permanent home here in Manila, we have traveled to the Philippines twice before. The first time was the destination wedding when we got married in a church in Tagaytay in January of 2017. The second time was to join a cultural heritage tour in July of 2018, which was organized by Chris through her work. As I mentioned in my description of this video, it was shot only about a week or so after I have moved for long-term living in Manila with Chris. And although I have been to the Philippines twice before, it was more of a vacation travel. This is to say that while before I was experiencing the Philippines simply as a tourist, with only short stays in Manila, this time it was different. This time I was walking and exploring the city as a long-term resident, hungry to get to know my new hometown and its surrounding areas. It must really sound like a cliche by now, but the thing that drew me to this country from the very start more than anything else was the kinds of people that live here. Although the Philippines has many diverse cultures and ethnic backgrounds, what unites them all is how kind, warm-hearted, and loving they are as a nation. This is a country of about 110 million people, living throughout the 7,000 plus islands across the archipelago. They come from different ethnicities, religions, and speak hundreds of different languages. The Philippines is inhabited by close to 200 ethnic nations, the majority of whose languages are Austronesian in origin. Some of the ethnic nations include Ivatan, Pangasinan, Kapampangan, Tagalog, Bicolano, Visayas, Zamboangueno, Sambanan, and many more. Yeah, these are pretty hard to pronounce. I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation just now. Currently, there are still many indigenous groups living throughout the Philippines that did not take on Western or Middle Eastern traditions. They are comprised of mainly Lumad tribes in the south and Igorot tribes in the north. During my travels through the northern Luzon mountain provinces in the summer of 2018, I have met some people from different Igorot tribes, such as the Ifugao and Kiangan tribes, and had a chance to see some of their customs. On the way back to Manila, we made a stop in Zambales and met some members of the Aita tribe, who shared their traditions including dances and the way of surviving in the jungles by using nothing but bamboo. It was fascinating to see all the ways that this plant can be used for everything from cooking, eating, making fire, to crafting weapons and other tools. In western Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago, there are ethnic nations who practice Islam. The Spanish call them Moros after the Moors, despite no resemblance or cultural ties to them apart from their religion. Although today, the Philippines has predominantly converted to Catholicism brought by the Spanish, there is still an influential Muslim population living mostly in the southern island of Mindanao. Today, they comprise roughly 10% of the nation's people. Islam reached the Philippines in the 13th century with the arrival of Muslim traders from the Persian Gulf, southern India, and their followers from several sultanate governments in the Malay archipelago. These first Muslims who arrived as traders were followed by missionaries in the late 14th and 15th centuries. They built a formation of sultanates and conquests in the region of Mindanao and Sulu. The Muslim conquest reaches far north as the Kingdom of Tondo, which was later supplanted by Brunei's vassal state Kingdom of Manila, that being current-day Manila. The original meaning of the word Manila meant the flower that grew by the bay. Spanish influence began in the Philippines starting in 1521 with the arrival and subsequent death of Ferdinand Magellan. Spanish colonization began with the arrival of Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's expedition on February 13, 1565 from Mexico, who established the first permanent settlement in Cebu. Over time, much of the archipelago came under Spanish rule, creating the first unified political structure known as the Philippines, in honor of then Spain's King Philip. Spanish colonization rule saw the introduction of Christianity, the Spanish Code of Law, and the oldest modern university in Asia. The Philippines was ruled under the Mexico-based Viceroyalty of New Spain, after which the colony was directly governed from Spain. Many of the nations converted to Christianity, particularly the lowland coastal nations, and began to adopt some elements of Western culture. Some of these tribes and nations have fallen quickly to Spanish rule, while others have resisted for many years and retained their previously established Muslim traditions. Spanish rule ended after 333 years in 1898 with a successful revolt led by, among others, Emilio Aguinaldo, who was a Filipino revolutionary and military leader and was elected as the first and youngest president of the Philippines from 1899 to 1901. This history is somewhat disputed though, because a lot of people would attribute the actual military leadership and fight for independence to Andres Bonifacio, who is often called the father of the Philippine Revolution. He was one of the founders and later the supreme leader of Katipunan, a movement first established in 1892, which sought the independence of the Philippines from Spanish colonial rule and eventually started the Philippine Revolution. The Katipunan Supreme Council coordinated with provincial councils in charge of public administration and military affairs, and with local councils in charge of the affairs of the district or barrio level. The Supreme Council of the Katipunan, under the leadership of Andres Bonifacio, declared a nationwide armed revolution against Spain and called for a simultaneous coordinated attack on the capital of Manila on August 29, 1896. After much bloodshed in this bitter conflict, the Filipino revolutionaries were able to force the Spanish into an eventual defeat. The Philippine Declaration of Independence occurred in Cavite on June 12, 1898, where Filipino revolutionary forces under General Emilio Aguinaldo proclaimed the sovereignty and independence of the Philippine Islands from Spanish colonization. The victory, however, was short-lived, since Spain itself was fighting a losing battle with the US in the Spanish-American War in 1898, lasting only 10 weeks. This led to Spain being forced to officially transfer ownership of the islands of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States in the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. Fighting then erupted between the forces of the United States and those of the Philippine Republic on February 4, 1899. On June 2, 1899, the First Philippine Republic officially declared war against the United States. The war officially ended on July 2, 1902, with the victory for the United States, and as a result, despite attempts at winning independence from all foreign powers, then President Emilio Aguinaldo was in charge of the potential negotiations which led to the establishment of American authority of the Philippines. The U.S. promised independence in the Jones Act of 1916, otherwise known as the Philippine Autonomy Act, and was then the new Constitution of the Philippines, from its enactment until 1934. The Philippine Commonwealth was established in 1935 as a 10-year temporary step prior to a planned full independence. This, however, was put into jeopardy in 1942 during World War II as Japan occupied the Philippines until the US military overpowered the Japanese in 1945. In that time, an estimated 500,000 Filipinos have been murdered in some of the worst atrocities in the war in the Pacific. A year later, on July 4, 1946, the Treaty of Manila had finally established, and the independent Philippine Republic was finally born. I hope that you have enjoyed this very brief history and the build-up to what is now modern-day Philippines, the country that I now call my new home. As a student of history, I appreciate learning about what led up to the formation of this nation and the kind of people that live here. I would also very much like to know your thoughts on it, if you feel like it was a fair assessment, and if there is something that you feel I should have also included, and something that I should also talk about in my future videos. Once again, I hope that you have enjoyed this 4-part series of my walk through some of the neighborhoods in my new city of Manila, and that you will continue following my future adventures throughout this wonderful country, as well as my adventures in other parts of the world.